So in today's video, I'm talking about how to avoid hurting someone's feelings when you're a people pleaser, because I know how important that is to you. Now, if you're new, my name's Michelle Ferris. I'm a psychotherapist and I love helping people create relationships that work. So the very first thing you want to do is watch your tone of voice. Often this one gets missed because we don't hear ourselves. Tone of voice sets the tone and it really determines whether or not our message is going to get heard. So for instance, even as a people pleaser, maybe you're feeling rushed or impatient on a certain day and you don't realize that your tone is a little harsh. Or maybe you tend to use humor or sarcasm when you talk to people. Making sure you watch your tone of voice is going to be important because that's going to minimize your chances of hurting someone's feelings. Because what I find is tone of voice is a major trigger in relationship, especially if we sound at all critical, sarcastic, or even impatient. Because the goal is to use a calm, even tone when we're talking to people, because that will increase your chances of being heard. Now, the next way you can avoid hurting someone's feelings is not to have a conversation when you're stressed out or irritable in any way, because that is going to majorly impact not only your tone of voice, but how you come across, whether or not you're able to listen effectively. Because I know for me, when I try to have a conversation quick in the moment, but I'm stressed already, it doesn't go well. I tend to mishear what the other person says, and I notice that I'm more defensive because I'm already halfway there in that conversation being stressed. So it's not a good place to have a deeper or more meaningful conversation. Another thing is when we're stressed, your words may sound sharper than they normally would be. You might sound curt or frustrated, and the other person might think that you're upset at them. One way to avoid this is to just own, hey, you know what? Right now isn't a great time to talk. I'm really frustrated about some things, so let's talk tomorrow. Just put it out there. Own your stress, because that is going to help you avoid hurt feelings in the future. The other thing I want you to do is to choose your time carefully. Make sure that you actually get the other person's permission first. So one way to do this is to just say, hey, can we talk about what happened last night because it's still bothering me? Is now a good time to talk? And if that other person says no, you wait. I know how hard this is, but this is going to be how you avoid hurting someone's feelings in that conversation. Because if both people are ready to have that conversation and you use the rest of these tips, you're going to be able to have a productive conversation. So the next tip for how to avoid hurting someone's feelings is using I messages. This is super key because often when an argument starts, it's because we're using you statements. You did this to me, you always, you never, you should. Those statements really escalate a conversation and cause hurt feelings. Now, if you're a people pleaser, you may be more cognizant of this already. You may even notice that you don't want to bring anything up because you don't want to hurt the other person's feelings. So when there's people pleasing, I want you to be able to still express what your needs are in that relationship, because that's what's going to keep your relationship healthy. So saying something like, I feel uncomfortable about what you just said to me, or this really hurts my feelings. I want you to own it. Because if you keep that focus on you and how you feel, the chances of you getting heard go up. Because most people aren't going to react defensively when we say I. They're much more likely to get defensive when we start with a you message. Because that feels like we're blaming them, and I don't want that for you. Another way to avoid hurting someone's feelings is to focus on sharing your point of view, not being right. So we want to avoid using words like always, never, should, because those imply that we're right and they're wrong. And that usually contributes to hurting someone's feelings. So what you want to do is you want to share your perspective. Hey, this is how I see it. This is my point of view. Because what that's going to do is that's going to, one, help you get heard in your relationship, and it's going to come across in a much more inviting way that the other person is actually going to want to hear you versus put their guard up and feel like they're being attacked. So sharing your point of view instead of being right goes a long way in avoiding hurt feelings. Another way to avoid hurt feelings is express your concerns using neutral terms. What I mean by that is we want to avoid any kind of judgments or generalizations like you always attack me. We want to be really specific and neutral by saying, you know what, when you're on your phone, when I try to talk to you, it really hurts my feelings. That's really specific and neutral because you're just naming the behavior they already did, which is going to make it easier for them not to get defensive and react negatively towards you. Now, the other thing you want to do is avoid making generalizations. Like, this always happens. You never support me. You've been doing this for 20 years. That's not going to go well. That's most likely going to create a reaction in the other person. So what we want to do when we're talking is using neutral terms, but sticking to the point. What's the one thing you are talking about? Don't bring 20 years of history in it because it's going to create hurt feelings. So the next way to avoid hurting someone's feelings is check out any negative assumptions you might be making. Because let's face it, we all make them. You may be assuming that the other person has a bad or hurtful intent towards you, or they aren't to be trusted, or they always blame you. So when you can catch those negative assumptions and own them as yours, they're not going to impact the conversation in a negative way. Now, this gets tricky because this is also the inner dialogue we have in our heads, assuming the worst, assuming it's not going to go well. Here we go again. We're just going to have the same conflict we always do. That's an assumption because nothing bad has happened yet. And if you can catch your assumptions, you can go into a conversation not assuming the worst, which is, let's face it, going to help you have a better outcome. So the next thing I want you to do for how to avoid hurt feelings is if the other person appears upset, I want you to ask and check it out. Because part of what people pleasers do is they avoid conflict at all costs. And when something shifts and the other person looks upset, we take it personally and we blame ourselves instead of actually just checking out that assumption. So that's what I want for you. I want you to say, hey, did something just happen? It seems like something changed or your mood changed. Did I say something that upset you? Because what's going to happen is the other person is going to be able to respond directly and say, no, you know what? I'm just not feeling well. And you may end up finding out that it has nothing to do with you. So you've worried for nothing. Or if they have said, well, you know what, this part of what you just said doesn't feel right, you can handle it right there. And if you're a people pleaser, you're going to be motivated to do what's right in that relationship and communicate it. But it does take courage because people pleasers, I know for me, I have wanted to avoid conflict for a long time. And it takes courage for me, even today, to say, you know what, I'm going to check this out. But it's so much better when I do, because most of the time when we're checking out our assumptions, we're not right. And that can be a huge win for you in conversation because we don't want to be operating off of negative assumptions. We want to be in the moment with that other person. That's what's going to keep your relationships healthy. So the next step I want you to do is I want you to go watch my video on tone of voice being a trigger, because that is your next step. Thanks so much.